So this is 2016, and it has been 15 years since September 11th, which has really gotten me thinking about terrorism. I think it's important to redefine what terrorism is, since many people who have grown up in an age of perpetual warfare may not remember what the whole point of terrorism is and how it differentiates from other types of violence. So this video is about terrorism, and I was going to write this in a Facebook post and realized that it was going to be a novel, and I already write enough novels on Facebook posts as it is. So simply put, terrorism is manipulation through fear. Terrorists want to shape your behavior by making you afraid to live your normal life. It's not about killing a bunch of people, although that certainly is an aim of many terrorists, but the real aim is to manipulate you into being afraid to live your normal life so that they can achieve some sort of end that's desirable for the terrorists. Now, it's important to distinguish that there are things motivated by terror and there is non-terrorist violence, and our approach to dealing with those two different sides of things should be completely different because the motives are different. There is extreme violence out there that's not motivated at all by terrorism, and there is terrorism that doesn't even employ the use of violence at all. An example of this is when a crazy person walks into a movie theater and opens fire on all the people who are in there. This person may be actually insane and just wants to kill a bunch of people, but has no desire to manipulate the behavior of other people through that action. With terrorism, motive really does matter, and fear is the means by which that motive is eventually realized. Again, terrorism really isn't a form of guerrilla warfare designed to maximize death, but a form of psychological warfare designed to maximize attention. And this is what is going to take us into the next big phase of this, the point of terrorism, the thing that the terrorists want us to think as people who are victims of being terrorized. They want you to think that you are not safe. Terrorism as a form of war has been around for a very, very long time, but when Americans think about terrorism, we think of September 11th. We think of the Boston Marathon bombings, we think of San Bernardino, we think of Paris, the London Underground, and a bunch of other high-profile attacks on major strategic targets. So here's what these events communicated to us. You are not safe. It doesn't matter whether you're at work, at home, participating in a marathon, at a coffee shop, just walking down the street. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, you're not safe. And the people who commit these acts of violence live in your communities, work with you, have normal conversations with you, and blend in. So therefore, you can't trust anyone ever. Now, I'm not saying this is true, because obviously it's not. You're more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to be killed by a terrorist, but this is the message that terrorists are out to spread. This is the big lie, and this is the lie that festers in your head and changes your behavior. So here's how terrorists expect you to react, because again, this is psychological warfare. When you are scared, you act predictively in one of two ways. You either run away or you fight. We know this is the fight or flight response in psychology. It's pretty simple, basic stuff. But these are reactions. They're not strategies for dealing with fear. They're impulsive, and they focus on exacting revenge, standing up to the bully, or finding sanctuary and retreat. The fight or flight response doesn't really do anything to address the root causes of your fear, but causes your brain to search for something, the next big expectation. And here we go with that. Your brain needs to categorize threats. This goes back to the time where we were running from saber-toothed tigers and big bears and sharks in the water and alligators and all that other stuff. Even without you thinking about it, you're not really doing any of this consciously, your brain is looking for patterns and information and ignores data that doesn't support your own notions about what the threat really is. By subconsciously putting a face on your fear, you experience the fight or flight response every single time that you see something that looks like the person or the people that you fear. So imagining here for a second that you have this person in your mind of the person who you think is a terrorist. Think about them for a second. Has the person that looks like this, have you met a person who looks like this who's not a terrorist? Is it fair to immediately assume that the person who you're thinking of in your head is a terrorist? Now, of course, if you're thinking of someone like Osama bin Laden or a really high-profile known terrorist, that's a little bit different. But when you think of what a terrorist, a general terrorist, looks like, and you have a picture in your mind, is it fair to make an assumption that a person that looks like that is a terrorist? And I think most people would say, no, that's not really a fair assessment, but this is what's happening in your brain, and just by calling it out like that, you can start to recognize that this is actually happening in you, and that you have been in some way affected by this effect with terrorism. The next thing that they expect is that you're going to forget. You're going to forget as you get more evidence that most people are inherently good and aren't going to do things that are designed to kill people or manipulate them to give themselves power or whatever. So you're going to need to be reminded. Just as you start to let your guard down, there's going to be another attack. Terrorists will constantly operate on the assumption that you're going to forget, and you need to be reminded. So what happens after you've been reminded, you have a picture in your head of what terrorists look like, and you are either running away or you're fighting actively? Well, here's what happens, and here's the real danger of terrorism, and this is what has been festering in our country. It's the cancer that's affecting our country, and it's been affecting us for 15 years. And from the very beginning, the terrorists knew that one attack on September 11th wasn't going to send our country into chaos, but that it would take time. Because here's what's happened. We've stopped trusting our neighbor. By blaming large swaths of the population, big groups of people for our problems, we've retreated into our homes, avoided people that are not like us, and we've stayed silent about the fact that we are afraid. Terrorists expect us to start to believe that people are inherently evil, or at least enough of them are, that you should avoid getting to know people who are different than you. Because you have your cone of safety surrounding you of people who you know well, or people who are like you, or people who are in the same social circles as you, socioeconomic status, the same race as you, the same religion as you, the same national origin as you, the same ethnicity as you. If you keep the sameness close by, you feel safe. As soon as you start inviting people into your life that aren't like you, it's pretty scary. This stage of terrorism, what the terrorists expect for us is to stop trusting our neighbor and to believe that people, or at least enough of them, are inherently evil. The next expectation that terrorists have of people is that we will fight. And we're going to fight wars that have no boundaries, spending money chasing an enemy that does not have a stronghold, that doesn't have a headquarters. We're going to expend our money and our lives to fight a ground war for an enemy that's conducting a psychological war. And the final thought of what's going to happen, what the expectation is that eventually we will lose. Fear will win, and we will lose. And what happens when we lose? Well, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea, but my thought is that we lose the ability to be in the areas where the terrorists want power. So maybe this means that we withdraw from the region where the terrorists are wanting to create a nation. And now the people who've taken power will be able to exploit our natural resources and our people and our talents. They'll get to be the ones who bring in safety, which will then make us, the people, feel like we owe them our allegiance and our loyalty. They'll have defeated us by unraveling us from the inside, unraveling the population, the trust, the relationships that bond us and make us who we are. It's not about destroying our infrastructure, or bombing our people, or killing people at all, actually. It's about destroying us from the inside. The expectation is that we will react, because people react when they're put in really terrible positions. But the truth is we have another option. And it's simple, but it's difficult to commit to. And that option is to look at our fear in the face and say that we're not going to give in. We are not going to succumb to our fear in engaging with other people. We are going to believe that people are inherently good and that love and compassion and empathy and the spread of human rights is the best way that we can defeat terrorism. By being unwilling to compromise our values and the sanctity of human life and human rights, we can destroy terrorism. And we can destroy it really, really swiftly. Because when we understand the forces at play, when we understand how the terrorists plan to destroy us, then we can fight back in an effective way. And the beauty of the effective way is that it's free. And this brings me to my final point. Regardless of the terrible things that they have done, I don't believe that anyone is unforgivable. People who commit these acts of terror want something specific. They have an idea of what the world will look like tomorrow if they are able to achieve their goals. And in order for us to really understand how to address those people, we need to understand what those goals are. What's that world that they're envisioning where they've won? What does it look like? What happens the day after the terrorists win the war? What does the next day look like? Is there music? This is starting to sound like a Doctor Who episode at this point, but we need to ask ourselves that question. We need to ask them that question. What do you want? And we need to understand what it is that would motivate them to do heinous, terrible things that defy their own human nature to achieve these ends. And then we need to look empathetically and figure out how we can address those situations that are causing them to become extreme and to become terrorists, how we can address the underlying pain that exists in a way that's beneficial to them restoring their own humanity. Growing up, I had no problem at all with the death penalty until someone in my family was killed. And it took a little while. True forgiveness is a lot more powerful of a weapon than revenge. If we're focused on seeking revenge rather than seeking the good, the right, the just, then we won't win. But if we're instead focused on restoring the concept of human dignity, then I think we've got a great shot. If you've made it this far, if you've made it to the end of this video, I thank you for sticking with me here, and I hope that this has impacted you in some way. Feel free to share it with whoever you want. I don't mind. Or please comment below. I'm really passionate about this topic and a lot of other geopolitical sorts of things. And despite my own strong beliefs and opinions, I do enjoy conversation, and I have many times changed my mind or changed the way I thought about things because people bring in arguments that make a lot of sense. As one of the many people responsible for the future of our country, as are all of us, it's important that we're able to engage in thoughtful dialogue about what we do as a country, what we do as a nation. And I think this is one of the most important pieces, that foreign policy piece that we've been missing. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you guys have a great day.